Optic Texas have announced their new roster for the remaining of the season, with Hook joining the team in place of Dashi. Today I'll be talking about the pros and cons of the roster, the new roles of the players and the long-term impact this roster has on the CDL. Before I start the breakdown, make sure you drop a like, it really helps out the channel, allows me to make more content. So the new roster is Illy, Scump, Shotzi and Hook, with Illy expected to move to the main AR role, Scump to the flex, which leaves Shotzi and Hook as a new SMG duo. When you compare this team to the old team, there's only one change on paper. However, there are a lot of role changes within the team. Let's discuss some of the pros and cons of this new Optic Texas team, starting off with some of the positives from this change. In the previous team, there was a clear pacing issue within the lineup, with Scump adapting a more slower playstyle in the last few years. This caused a huge gap in pacing between the SMG duo of Scump and Shotzi, and this was seen within the results. The solution to this was always to move Scump to the flex role, where he could play his game and perform to his highest ability. This then opens up the possibility to bring in a more aggressive SMG that can match the pacing of Shotzi and really keep up with the other SMG duos in the league. It is a known fact that Optic were in for Pred, and the move failed due to Seattle Surge not willing to let him go, so the objective to get an aggressive SMG player was very clear. Hook is the next target. It makes a lot of sense and fixes the pacing issue that has been very clear for this Optic Texas roster. Now that the pacing issue has been addressed, what other positives can we get from this team? Well, we do know that there's a known variable of Shotzi, Hook and Illy. When playing together, this trio managed to make 6 final appearances and win 4 championships, including the 2020 Call of Duty Champs, in just 11 events as a trio. This is a remarkable stat and can reassure the Green Wall of the potential success that we may see in the upcoming future. With Rambo Race still on the coaching staff, Hook should be in an environment where he can perform at his very best once again. This could be a scary sight for the rest of the league, because if this team clicks, it could be very, very dangerous. Now, the last positive point I wanted to talk about before we address the cons of the team is, can this roster finally unlock Illy? Illy is a fantastic player, and over the years we have seen some incredible plays that really showcase his talent, but we've also seen some questionable performances where he looks like the fraction of a player that we're used to seeing. Now, once again, this could be down to a pacing issue within the team where a lot of the players didn't look their very best, but for me, I really think that he will benefit playing in a main AR role. When you look at Illy as a player and assess his playstyle, his main strengths are his leadership, his decision making, his S&D ability and shot calling. He's a very, very good team player and a role filler, and he can also play the objective and let his team push out. And all of these attributes remind me of accuracy for Seattle Surge. I mentioned this in a previous video, but I really do think that Illy as a main AR will showcase all of these strengths and really progress his career in that role. The question with Illy over the few years has always been his consistency, and I think him playing as that main AR would definitely fix that problem. In Search and Destroy, we may also see this team benefit with the role switch, because Illy likes to snipe. Now that he can have Illy on the sniper and not lose that pace, because Shotzi has a partner in Hook to follow him up and get those trades on the map that he didn't have last season. There's also Scump that can play more of an island and play his own game without negatively affecting the team. Once again, I think the pacing in Search and Destroy with this new team will massively improve. Previously, I'd always watch Shotzi on the minimap in Search and Destroy, and I felt like he was making plays by himself, and sometimes this may work for him and he'll pick up a 2 or a 3 piece, but many of the rounds he may die and have a lackluster performance. And once again, it wasn't necessarily his fault, it was more because of the pacing issues as a team in general. I think Dashi is a fantastic Search and Destroy player, but overall I think Illy does edge him in that game mode, and once again might be one of the deciding factors in why they decided to keep Illy on the team instead of Dashi. But overall, if I think about that main AR position, I think it could have been either Dashi or Illy. Dashi can bring more slaying power to the roster and definitely has a higher potential in my opinion, but I really do believe that Illy has the intangible attributes that we don't see on the scoreboard that can really help the team benefit. The deciding factor for me has to be the leadership that Inda brings to the team. If you bring in Dashi instead, there's just no real leader, and we saw how Optic Texas fared without a leader last season when Illy had that injury in his hand. So we've spoken about how good the roster can be, but there are also some problems with this team. There are 2 main problems that I can think of. The first problem I have is that where is Illy's head at and the chemistry in the team? Is the chemistry all there? The reason why I say this is because it was a known fact that R-Cities and Pred were linked to this team, and both moves failed due to team problems with their current organisation. This means that Illy and Dashi both would have been dropped, so if those moves went ahead, Illy would no longer be on the team. Will this have an effect on his mental state? Will this maybe play a factor if the team loses the series? We saw the problems in the first few weeks of Modern Warfare 2, where the team were set to break up in the summer, but they didn't, and this definitely made an impact in the first major. But how can Illy perform knowing that his spot was also on the line? I think Illy's professional enough to move on from this problem, and maybe he knew he wasn't performing to his best, but at the same time, if they start to lose some series, could this be another problem that starts to fulfill, and could this just be a very, very chaotic period for Optic Texas? However, on that same note, I think with the addition of Hook, the morale might have started to increase because of the way Illy, Hook and Shotzi have performed in the past. This could bring a bit of positive reinforcement, and they might have that old Dallas Empire feel to the team. So this is a 50-50 to me. I honestly don't know. I think the first few weeks will be very important. If they start off well, they might be able to ride the momentum and really perform well at the end of the year. Now the second, and for me the biggest problem, is what Hook are we going to see? Are we going to see the MVP Hook that we know could be the best SMG in the game pairing up with Shotzi, absolutely ripping up the league? Or are we going to see the Hook that can't even spell his name in Cold War? There's a very, very fine line here. We need to see what Hook we're going to get. I think once again the positive in this point is that they've set up an environment where Hook has to perform, where he's got his old teammates back, where he was his best self, as well as his coach. I think overall being in that Optic kind of environment may be very positive for him. And then once again, we also have the pressure built up from being in Optic. Something that Crim6 and Zuma did speak about recently is that there is a lot more pressure when you're on that Optic team. And I'm not sure how Hook may fare with that pressure. If they don't start off well, could this not be good for the team at all? Optic Texas heavily tried to get Pred in the last few weeks. Could this also be a factor in Hook's head? He knows he wasn't the first choice. This seems like a bit of a last minute decision just because Hook is a free agent. It kind of fits the role, and they were definitely not going for him as their first choice. This seems like a very last minute decision, and this could have a negative impact on the team. Once again, this is all predictions. In my honest opinion, I think the team's quite good. I think that they had to get rid of Dashi. I really don't think the pacing was there, especially the way the other SMGs were performing in the league. I really did not see Optic winning anything else this season. It's a real shame that that roster didn't work out because there was so much potential at the start of Vanguard, but I think the way the off-season went and the fact that the team wanted to split, I just think it was too much for them to carry on, and there's too much emotion involved for them to keep going for the rest of the season. Once again, as I addressed earlier, I think it's between Illy and Dashi for the spot. I think just because of the intangibles that Illy does bring, he maybe got that over Dashi. I do not think it was a talent perspective that made that decision. At the same time, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, so there could definitely be something to do with attitude and Dashi, which has been talked about in the past. Now, my predictions for the future. I'm hoping that this team does work out. I think Hook is the X factor, and if he can perform to a great level, I have no worries that this team will perform to a very, very high standard. But let's talk about past this. Let's talk about when Scumpy retires. What could the play be? I honestly think that this could be a potential play. Let me know what you think down in the comments about this potential roster. But I think if Hook fits in well and the team gels and they perform really well, Scump retires, I can honestly see Dashi coming back to the team. Dashi seems right now where his headspace isn't all there, so I think maybe having a few months off to the end of the season, I know it's not an ideal situation, but I think that could really benefit him. I really don't want to see him leaving Optic right now. I think him staying there, maybe just playing Valorant and kind of getting off the game, getting his head straight, and maybe really kind of deciding what he wants to do in his future could be the best move for him. I think honestly he's talented enough to join any team in the league, but the way the league is right now and Major 2 starting in 5 days, I just can't see him joining a roster that quickly. Especially with all the top teams having ARs already sorted. I really don't know where he would go. So for me, what a potential roster could be is that at the end of the year, Scumpy goes, and now we kind of having that pacing issues resolved. Because Scumpy is no longer there, Illy can once again go back to that flex role, and Dashi can go as that main AR. And I'm not saying Scumpy was a problem at all, but I just think Scumpy and Illy in the same team, with Scumpy being the SMG, was the problem. I think Scumpy had to move to that flex role. And now that Scump is potentially out of the picture, I think the team could work nicely with Dashi fitting in as that main AR, and that could potentially be the roster in the future. Let me know what you think down in the comments if you enjoy the video, what you think of Hook joining Optic, and hopefully see you guys in the next video.